will now come to order. I'm Troy Whitmore, chair of this committee. We are convened at 5:30 p.m. and I would respectfully ask everyone attending this meeting to mute your phones unless you are recognized to speak, and that goes for our computers as well. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Please note that committee meetings of the RTD Board of Directors will be held remotely via Zoom and will be audio and video recorded. The meeting recordings, along with the unofficial minutes of the meetings, will be posted as soon as practical on the board's website. This is rtd-denver.com, and a live stream of this meeting is available via RTD's YouTube page. At this evening's meeting, we are providing communication access real-time translation, better known as CART. Anyone who would like to access this service should send an email to the RTD board office at rtd.boardoffice@rtd-denver.com, and a link will be provided. All right, I would now like to call the roll for the committee members of Operations and Safety. Director and Vice Chair Julian Bouquet. Do expect him in about 5 or 6 minutes. Vince Busick.
Here.
Ian Harwick.
Here.
Paul Rosenthal.
Present.
Joyanne Rushka.
Present.
Marjorie Sloan.
Here.
And I'm Troy Whitmore, and I am indeed present. So for the record, at this moment, we have 6 directors present who make up the 7 members of this committee. Additionally, we have other board members not on the committee, including Doug Tisdale and Michael Guzman. And please let me know if anybody else joins us, and we'll definitely, oh, hello there, Peggy, thanks for waving. And Director Peggy Catlin has joined us as well. All right,
Chair, I'm here as well. This is Eric Davidson.
How could I miss the chair? It's going to be one of those nights, guys. Good thing it's going to be a short meeting. Sorry, Eric. Eric Davidson's here too, so we have a good showing from many board members. So now like to open up the public comment to anyone who would like to address the committee regarding any topic listed in the published meeting agenda for the current and immediately preceding month. If you wish to speak and have not already done so, please either raise your virtual hand or press *9 on your phone. Now, during this time, the committee will not offer any direct comments or responses. However, if you would like to be contacted regarding your public comment, please email the RTD board office at rtd.boardoffice@rtd-denver.com. All right. Mr. Kroll, are there any hands raised for public comment?
Hi, Committee Chair Whitmore. This is Jack Kroll, Executive Manager of the Board Office. I do not see any hands raised at this time.
All right, thank you very much. Were there any emailed comments received for today's board meeting? Committee
Chair Whitmore, this is Jack Kroll again. There were no comments received via email prior to this meeting.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kroll. With no other participants wanting to speak, nobody in queue or no emailed comments, the public comment portion of the meeting is now closed. There are no recommended actions on the agenda this evening. However, we have item D under discussion items, the Human Resources Update, Q4 2023. So I would like to ask Charlene Pelleggi, Chief People Officer, to present this item. The floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you, Chair Whitmore. Can you hear me?
It's a bit choppy, but I think we'll be fine.
Okay, I'll move my speaker a little closer.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Chair Whitmore. Thank you, committee, for having me here. I'm going to present Q4 of the Human Resources Update. I'm going to share my screen. Are we seeing it at this point yet? Not yet.
Not yet. There we go.
How about now? And is it in the wrong view? Because you know I like to do that all the time.
Yeah, it's not in presentation view yet.
Yeah, hold on. How about now?
I think well, it's a different view, but it's a better view.
You know, it wouldn't be one of these meetings without me and my technical. Just give me one moment here.
I think we have a notes page up.
Yeah, I'll just get it.
While you're doing so, I will note that Vice Chair of the committee, Julian Bouquet, aka Coach Bouquet, has joined the meeting.
Thank you, Chair. We got the W, so that was good.
Glad to hear it. Glad to hear it.
Okay, so I'm having difficulty with my multiple screens again, so I don't have any notes in here. Is this problematic for the committee if we go this way?
Darlene, we will, Ms. Pelleggi, Deborah Johnson, General Manager, CEO, momentarily, we will adjust your screen. Just give us a quick second because it is sort of difficult to see.
Thank you.
Hold on tight. I don't think it'll take us long to get this fixed.
Yes, I know. I appreciate the patience. Well, while we're waiting for the presentation to come up, I am hopeful. Hold on. I may be able to, just one moment. Maybe I've fixed my own challenge. How about now?
There you go.
Here we go.
Got it.
Just in time for John to come up. He needed a little exercise today. Thank you, John. So my apologies. So as I stated, we're going to do the Q4 human resources update. It will be concentrated simply on recruitment and retention. That has been the primary focus for human resources throughout 2023. It will remain the primary focus for HR through into 2024 as well. So today we'll just be doing numbers with respect to recruitment and retention. So starting off with recruitment, I would like to first highlight that while we did not get exactly where we may want to be, meaning we still have positions available, we made significant progress this year. In 2023, a total of 577 new hires were made throughout the 12 months of the year. We were projecting in previous presentations, I had indicated that we were projecting to be about 550 for the year, so we slightly surpassed that. If we look at separations though, which as we've talked about before, continues to be an area of focus for us. We have fewer separations in 2023 than we had in 2022. You'll see in Q4 of 2023, we had 109 as opposed to the prior quarters. I want to call out that number. It is a peak, it is an increase, but we actually experienced a peak of retirees actually in the last 2 quarters generally, and that was also true in 2022. And I understand historically that has been the norm at RTD for retirees to increase in Q3 and Q4. When we look at these numbers, while I'm not happy that we have 361 separations, what I will say is that our overall vacancy rate has dropped by 6% year over year. So at the end of 2022, our vacancy rate was 18%, and we closed out 2023 with a 12% vacancy rate. Additionally, with our separations, again, you can see that we had 390 total separations in 2022, and that went down to 361. Still more than we would like to see, absent those who wish to retire. If someone has reached the end of their career, I am happy for them to retire. But that actually represents an 8% reduction in the number of separations. So overall, the trend is a positive one, and you'll see that as we progress through to the next slides here. So as has been the norm throughout the year, we start at a high level and then we bring it down focusing in on key areas, bus operations, rail operations, and transit police. I say key areas, but I do want to highlight, while we are reflecting these three primary areas, every position at the agency is important to the delivery of service. These positions are predominantly front-facing, and these are the positions that we have prioritized along with safety positions with our recruitment process. We do have as was discussed in a prior presentation, when we did an overview of our recruitment process, we do triage. We can't hire all positions all at once. We just don't have the capacity. So we prioritize our front-facing, customer-facing positions, bus and rail operators, and maintenance, as well as service and cleaning, and our transit police department. So if we look at our bus operations, just again just to reorient the slide, a downward arrow means that we have seen a positive trend as a decrease in the overall vacancy rate. The arrow is going up. It means we've had an increase in that quarter. If the arrow is red, that means that the vacancy rate is above 15%. That's our target rate. And if it's yellow, it means that it's still above 15%, but we've had a positive trend, so we've lowered the rate. And then of course green is it's below 15%, and we've had a positive trend, meaning we're reducing our vacancy rate. So for our bus operators full-time, the vacancy rate dropped to 15%, and that's a 4-point change from the prior quarter. Part-time operators, there were no change in this quarter. With respect to our maintenance and general repair and our body shop positions, we had a 5-point reduction there. So that went from 20% in Q3 to 15% in Q4. And then in our service and cleaning, down 1 point. But what we're really pleased about here is that we continue the trend of staying below a 10% vacancy rate for our service cleaning and vault within bus operations. Moving over to rail operations, we've had an opposite trend for Q4 with our rail operators, both for part-time and full-time. We had an increase. For our full-time operators, we had a 2% increase. So we went from 18% in Q3 to 20% in Q4. The 33% should jump off the page. That represents one position. So it's just when you have a small number of part-time operators, if you lose one, that increases your vacancy rate significantly. We did, however, see a continued downward trend in light rail vehicle maintenance. So that came in at 18%, down 3 points. And then our maintenance of way and infrastructure came in at 33% for the quarter, down 4 points. I would say within the maintenance of way and infrastructure, as I presented in previous reports, this has been an area of real focus for us, and it has been an area of challenge. We have had difficulty recruiting key positions like rail laborers, but we've had some success. And why I'm pointing this out is because we've seen 2 quarters where we've had some success, and I'm hoping that and success being that we've been able to fill some very difficult and challenging to fill positions. And we're hopeful. What I can see in January looks like that trend is continuing. So we are making some progress with our key positions in maintenance of way and infrastructure in our rail operations. If we go over to our transit police, very heavy focus in 2023 on building out the initial start of the development of the transit police department. So you'll see zeros across the board. We were able to exceed actually our vacancies and hire a few more officers, rank and file officers, than we initially had planned in 2023. I do want to give the caveat here that this is the end of 2023. And so if we were to look at this, because we have a new budget year, and this is the budgeted positions that we had for transit police for 2023. So these numbers will go up again in 2024 because we have new targets for 2024. So I just wanted to highlight that. By no means does the 0 here for number of officer intend to convey that we've hired all of the police officers that we are intending to recruit. That is not the case. That just means we hit and in fact exceeded our target for 2023. So I'll pause here because the next that I'll be going on is retention. And what I want to say here, I just want to highlight that recruitment has been a very successful year. Talent acquisition has been incredibly successful in 2023. Over the course of 2022 and 2023, the talent team has been able to recruit close to 1,000 or 1,000 new hires. Additionally, I want to highlight that as of the end of this month, the talent team will be fully staffed under this with the support of GM Johnson. We were able to add additional positions to support our recruitment efforts because we are still competing for talent and we still are not where we need to be. And we still, as I've highlighted, have some very key positions that continue to be difficult to fill. So we see that, I see that as a very positive trend moving forward. And we will continue to build capacity in that team so that we can try to counter some of the challenges that we are having with retention. So looking at retention, I've got 2 slides that I'll share. And one is Q4. So we're focused on Q4. The next slide, I've taken the year and I'll show and discuss just some of the trends that we're seeing with our retention. So as has been the case in every quarter preceding the fourth quarter, the #1 reason for voluntary separation from RTD is retirement. In Q4, nearly 30% of the voluntary separations were for retirement. In looking at that number a bit further, those retirees in this quarter, they range between 10, actually there is an individual 10, but on average 15 to 25 plus years of service to the agency. I highlight that because it indicates what we would consider to be a normal retirement rate. Not everyone works for 40 years, as we have seen some retirees who have been at RTD for 30 and up to 40 years. But on average, we're looking at about a 20-year tenure. So this is showing that we're having pretty consistent. So why I highlight that is I'm not seeing any trends that would indicate necessarily that we have individuals retiring sooner than we would anticipate. But we do have a number of individuals who are eligible for retire, and we are seeing a consistent trend. And so when I was saying previously with respect to our recruitment, when I say I'm hoping that we'll be able to increase our recruitment, we want to be able to increase to counter some natural attrition like retirement. The other thing that I'd like to pull out and call out there would be with respect to other employment. Other employment sits at 15%. Again, we'll see in the next slide that is a pretty consistent trend. It's been throughout every quarter, I think between 14 and 16% of separations have been noted as other employment. I would call though that we do have with unknown and job abandonment. If I put those two together, given that unknown means we don't know why, they did not communicate with us the reason for their separation, and job abandonment is they didn't come back into work. If we look at that, that's about 26%. And again, that is also a consistent trend throughout the year. And finally, what I'd want to call out here is that we have family reasons, 15% for family reasons. So one of the things we're looking at in the new year is we're going to try to drill down into our stay interviews that we do to see if we can find a correlation between some of the information we're receiving from our employees in their first 30, 60, 90 days to then see if there is a correlation with individuals who choose to depart RTD, if we could find any insight that we might be getting from the stay interviews. Some things that we do hear in the stay interviews are about scheduling, that they find some of the schedules to be challenging, that training is traditionally a Monday to Friday, what one might consider to be normal office hours. But then yet when they get out and they're working after they've passed through training, it's very different. And so we are hearing some of that in our stay interviews, but we don't have enough intel to tell us that family reasons is directly correlated to scheduling. So we are going to be looking at that in 2024 to see if we can get a little bit more insight, so then we can develop some strategies to try to mitigate these results. So lastly, as I said, we've pulled it all together, 2023 retention by quarter. I've been here for a year. As I've communicated on numerous times previously, I am a bit of a data geek. We do struggle a little bit, as we've discussed right now, with some of our data and how we have to make sure that we're looking at it, cleansing it, if you would, manually, to make sure that the numbers are accurate and reflecting appropriately. So this chart, I think, is really important because it highlights the trends that quarter over quarter we can see, as indicated, that retirement is by far the leading reason for separation. And you can see in the last two, that would be the yellow and the blue, that's Q3 and Q4. You can see the growth there, that the last 2 months, last two quarters, pardon me, of every year, we can anticipate a bit of a peak in our retirements, our retirees. And then again, if you just look by the graphs, you can see family reasons, again, pretty consistent, job abandonment, pretty consistent, and other employment quarter over quarter are roughly consistent. So while we don't know all of the drivers, the fact that we're having a very consistent number every quarter would indicate that there is some data there that we need to uncover. Because it's something one could argue that they're experiencing internal to RTD, and or just the continued competition external to the agency. That is the very short and condensed Q4 summary. I've attempted to mix in a little bit of how we've done year over year. But as I started, recruitment and retention will continue to be the primary focus for human resources under our People Power initiatives into 2024. So, Mr. Chair, I'll pause for any questions.
All right, thank you very much, Charlene. I see two hands up. We'll start with Director Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Charlene. I'm certainly very pleased to see the increase in hires and the decrease in separations. So that is certainly credit to you and the general manager, your entire team, and the agency. So thank you very much for that trend. It's very positive, and I appreciate that. Looking at the number and also a trend in the number of bus operators, the fact that our vacancy rate is lower, and I really love to see that as well. And I guess I'm just in terms of numbers, and certainly if you don't have those offhand, that's fine too, but and maybe our next meeting you can let us know. In terms of the how many actual bus operators do we have, and how many vacancies do we have? So if, let's just say we have, does that make sense? And the same thing, same question for rail operators. How many rail operators do we have, and how many vacancies do we have?
May I respond?
Please go ahead.
Great. So thank you for the question, Director Rosenthal. First off, it is a focus. I did say recruitment and retention, but we are working diligently in HR to be able to provide and to utilize our reporting processes. reporting capabilities, pardon me, within Workday. And why I highlight that is because we'll be able to, once we get our budgeted numbers matched with what we have in Workday, we'll be able to actually prepare, the Workday will be able to prepare, so no manual requirement here, some more robust reports. So that is something that we are working on, and wanted to let the committee know that for 2024. To specifically answer your question, I do have information relative to both bus and rail. If I'm looking at number of vacancies for full-time bus operators, the most recent figure that I have is 114. So we currently have 736 full-time bus operators, and we have 114 vacancies. For part-time, we have currently 80 part-time bus operators, and we have 22 vacancies. For rail, give me one moment here. My rail is very, very tiny, so pardon my moment here with my vision. If I'm looking at operators, give me one moment. We have,
And I realize I'm,
Okay.
asking you to scurry there. I
for
apologize.
full-time, that's okay. For full-time train operators, we have 37 vacancies. We have 153 occupied positions.
I see that. Go ahead, CEO
Yeah.
John.
Thank
ahead.
you. I just wanted to qualify, just for nomenclature's sakes, here at this agency, when we reference rail operators, we're talking about light rail operators. With the directly operated inline, those positions are referred to as a train engineer. So I just wanted to ensure that everybody understood that there is a difference between light rail and commuter rail, and then more specifically what Ms. Pileggi outlined, directly employed individuals with the Regional Transportation District, and does not encapsulate the third-party contractors. I speak to that because I know a couple of months ago there appeared to be some discrepancy with what we presented, because there was confusion relative to our concessionaires and our third-party fixed route operators. Thank you very much for allowing me to interject.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, GM Johnson, and my apologies for not clarifying that sooner.
Okay.
And then with respect to the part-time, as I was highlighting, we have that 33% vacancy rate because we have one vacant position and 2 occupied positions. And that's the data that I have available at this point.
Thank you. Really appreciate that. And then my other question is, so do you also compare with other transit agencies, kind of like what's the trend on some of these, both hiring and retention? And if you do have that kind of data or analysis, how do we compare? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So I do not have any specific data on other agencies. I would like to get that, and I do know just anecdotally from conversations that other agencies are also struggling with recruitment and retention, but I do not have the specific numbers. And in fact, I wouldn't have felt comfortable even comparing our numbers until after we've had this year. So certainly, I know there's some coordination going on with some of our colleagues in the district who are trying to help all agencies fill any shortages. So I anticipate that we'll be able to share some information, but as of right now, I do not have, other than just, I know people are all struggling with recruitment and retention.
Thank you.
CEO GM Johnson, I believe you have something to add.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director Rosenthal, for the question, and to CPO Pileggi for addressing it. Just to provide context, customarily prior to the pandemic, generally frontline positions such as bus operators and rail operators, be it heavy rail, light rail, commuter rail, generally have a vacancy rate of 8 to 12% has been customary in the industry. With the adverse impacts that we've had with the fierce competition for talent, with the various aspects that have plagued us as a society, the behaviors that you see, the assaults and things of the like, our figures are hovering around where everyone else is, basically. And I say that while I don't have a report directly in front of me, just having had a conversation with the fellow CEOs as I serve as the second vice chair on the APTA CEO coordinating committee, we have conversations along these lines. And so basically we're sharing information, and there is an APTA workforce development seminar that's taking place in just a couple of months. And so as we go forward, CPO Pelegi or a member of our staff will be participating, but I wanted to share that to let you know that while we don't have data that we're comparing, we're sharing our war stories for all intents and purposes. And what we're trying to do is work collectively to talk about what might we be doing, because one of the corresponding elements in reference to the retention is, of course, what's happening in the workplace for frontline transit employees, which I'm certain most of you are aware of, with the national attention that has been garnered from the adverse impacts in the work environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All your questions answered, Director Rosenthal? All right, I will move next to committee member Joanne Rusha. Director, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple of questions. The first, just to remind us and the audience, because the chart wasn't labeled on top, the one that showed our voluntary departure reasons, is that for frontline staff only, operators, MOW, or are we talking organization-wide, or are we just speaking to one of our departments?
Go ahead, Charlene.
Thank you. So Director Rusha, that's for the whole agency.
Thank you. May I go ahead? May I dialogue briefly, Mr. Chair?
You may.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay, so do you happen to know how many involuntary terminations we had in that time period? I know obviously we're focused on retention, and a huge aspect is that voluntary, but I think that might also be a helpful data point.
I may be able to locate it. I believe it is, I believe I did look at it. I don't have it handy right now, but I believe it's somewhere between 12 and 16% is involuntary, which is lower than 2022.
Okay, thank you. That's good to know. And of course, I'll leave it to your department and general manager as to how you want to display the information moving forward if you choose, but it was a data point I was interested in. So my next question or comment was just that I had emailed a request for information for this meeting about similar to Director Rosenthal, the number of staff that we have in each department and like their job titles, and then the number of openings in those job titles, whether it was represented or non-represented. And the reason behind that is so that we can have a more holistic view of our people-powered challenges. And also there's no confusion amongst us as the public about job titles and the like. And I think that our general manager sort of touched on that. So you'd indicated that or at least I think you indicated that data wasn't readily available in Workday. But do you have a timeline as to when RTD could make that data available for the board and possibly even just kind of present some of that information in our next quarterly report?
Thank you. So yes, did receive the email, Director Rusha. That request is not one that, as we've already discussed, can be pulled out of Workday at this point. There's a lot of cleanup that needs to happen, and from an illustrative purpose, as you may recall on the slide, we had in 2023, 3,199 budgeted positions. Workday believes we have over 5,000. And so unfortunately, to pull that data together, we have to pull a report out of Workday, and then it requires people hours to actually go through and call, and we can't do it alone in HR. We would need to meet with this department and that department and go line by line. So that is if I was being optimistic, that is a weeks, not days, and might even be month, trying to be responsive to the board, of course, and to this committee, but also trying to manage the focus of time and attention on recruiting and trying to retain. So I would do my best, but I would hesitate to say weeks. The performer in me wants to say weeks, but I rely on a lot of people in the agency to get that done.
If I may, Mr. Chair. That's okay. Thank you. So thank you for the explanation. I didn't get a response when I emailed, so thank you for filling that in. And I, just so that I understand, you had said something. Let me rephrase. Will we have a point in the near future where Workday knows how many positions we have available, what's open, and what those job titles are, and at what point in the future? So, you know, maybe we can just have a better, we can manage our expectations about that kind of information request. And I also hope that the intent behind my request was understood, because it gives us, again, I think a better picture of what positions and what critical positions are, you know, are in need of filling.
So I'll parse that into two separate pieces. So first off, with the answer is yes, that is a goal. CFO McLeod and I just this afternoon were talking about, okay, how can we strategize, sorry, not just related to your request, but because this is something that we want to have for business intel so that we can work with it. So it is definitely, it is a future state that we will get to. I think at this point, I would feel comfortable to say the answer is yes, we will get there. I would need to circle back with the people that I'm going to need to work with to find out what would be a reasonable timeline. And I do see that GM Johnson has her hand up, so I can yield the floor to you, GM Johnson, if you're looking to weigh in here.
Mr. Chair, if I may? Yes. Thank you very much, Director Rusha, for your question. I just wanted to provide some context relative to where we are in recognizing that as the leader of the staff, we collectively, as you know, are working on 3 initiatives, being back to basics, people power, and welcoming transit environment. And all of those 3 elements are interwoven as relates to our 4 strategic priorities of, you know, customer excellence, community value, employee ownership, and then financial success. The reason I broach that is because as we talk about getting back to basics, we have a lot of systems here that aren't interdependent. And as we looked at Workday, recognizing that we own it collectively, myself, the chief people officer, individuals within the organization, Workday was implemented right before COVID happened. There's not a myriad of training that went on. There are ample work rules that haven't been leveraged in the way in which they should be. So collectively, we are working towards that. And there are goals that people have within the organization. And that's why we prioritize that for this year. So I just wanted to add that context because I know I have had conversations with the board in different committee meeting settings and discussions. So I just wanted to add a little color to that because it's critically important. And as we talk about everything that we need to do from a financial accountability vantage point, a lot of these systems are disparate. And as we look to embark upon a comprehensive enterprise resource program, this is part and parcel of all of that as we move forward. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Director Rusha, and CPO Pelegi. I just wanted to provide context. We want to do the best that we can, but first, that's why we say we got to get back to basics because then comes people power and then comes the welcoming transit environment because they're interwoven. Thank you.
Thank you, GM Johnson. Director Rusha, One more final question, and then I'm going to come back to you because I've got two other people in queue.
Sounds good. I had just one left. Thank you,
Okay.
sir. All right. We're tracking today. So this question is, I think for our general manager, just broadly speaking, so we can have a better understanding. During peak times, how many operators and buses do we have out that RTD is operating? During peak times on a given day. And I ask because I think it's important for folks to understand what goes in and what is needed to run our service. So I was wondering if you could touch on that briefly, and then if it doesn't take up too much time, maybe a quick point or two on how we also, just so folks can understand how we also, schedule and work with operators, our relief operators, so that we can meet, challenges when it's inclement weather, folks call out and stuff like that.
Please proceed.
Yes, thank you. First and foremost, I can provide you context. I don't have those numbers readily available. So let me explain. So as we talk about our peaks, basically it's contingent upon the AM peak and the PM peak, and how many vehicles do we have readily available to deploy the services we have. And that basically is predicated upon our revenue service hours. And that's how we develop a schedule. And hence that's why we have 3 service changes during the course of the year. So just for discussion's sake, I can give you a scenario that we'll address, but we can circle back with the actual numbers for the service change. So say hypothetically speaking, there's certain times of day in which we have different pullouts that we basically predicate what our spare ratio is predicated upon. Spare ratio has to do with how many buses that we have readily available that we can store based upon the overall count that we need for the vehicles to be pulled out, right? So say for instance, like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday may be a peak day in the morning for a 4 a.m. pullout, and say that we needed 200 buses to be pulled out at the ready. We could have a spare ratio. Well, those are vehicles. I meant to say the extra board, we would have like a 20% extra board, right? So when you take that number in consideration, you were talking about you'd have 40 operators readily available. And so basically that's how we plan our service delivery based upon that type of service. On a Saturday, it could be less because traditionally we don't offer the same service unless we had a special event. And on a Sunday, it could be less as we run a different schedule. So that's what it's predicated upon as we go forward. It ebbs and flows during the course of the year. Quite naturally, you have seasonal dips as it relates to summer breaks and generally around the traditional holiday season. And so that's why we do those service changes to account for the fluctuation in reference to our service delivery model going forward. And so relative to what we're talking about with the recruitment, we know when we're utilizing our comprehensive operation analysis that we have coined here at this agency as being our system optimization plan, as we look to see where we're trying to go, we use that as the basis point to determine how many operators we need, but it goes beyond just the operators, because to the point that Ms. Pelleggi made, as we look at our light rail service delivery, we need to ensure that we have track inspectors, maintenance of way, people that can work on the overhead catenary system and things of the like. So all of that factors into the overarching the service delivery, the schedule, because you start with the schedule, then you deem how many vehicles, you deem how many people, and to be in alignment with what we're doing, utilizing federal monies, that determines the spare ratio for the vehicle as well as to how many people we have. Did that answer your question, ma'am?
Yes, and I think that snapshot was good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. With that, I'll move to committee member Marjorie Sloan for her questions. Marjorie?
Yes, but I believe Doug is ahead of me. But okay, I'll go.
I went to committee members first.
Wow, I didn't realize Doug was not a member. This is very similar to Director Rusha's question. It may be getting into the weeds, but it will really help me understand both retention and recruitment. And that is the distinction between part-time positions and full-time positions. Are they automatically labeled that, and the part-time? I'm going to just ask a series of questions and someone can respond. Are the part-time people usually relief, and those are dedicated to be part-time positions? Is it a person who only wants to work part-time and RTD is accommodating them? Do some of the part-time people, would they really rather be full-time people? And I can see how that would relate to people staying in the job and people being recruited to understand what their job is.
So whoever would like to address that, either Charlene or Ms. Johnson. Ms. Johnson, go ahead.
I can start. So thank you very much, Director Sloan, for your question. So there was a couple of things. Traditionally here at this agency, we usually have part-time employees that are actually retirees. They may retire and they come back and we hire them in that capacity. So when we talk about do they want to stay longer, they've usually left the organization and have come back. I qualify that in a way that's really important because there's a sense of familiarity. Some transit agencies actually have it prescribed that one has to start as a part-time operator prior to becoming a full-time operator. And contingent upon the operating environment, sometimes that doesn't bode well, but if you're in an area where there's flexibility with schedules and work, that may be fruitful, recognizing that people could operate what we call splits, right? There's something in the morning and then they don't work for 3 or 4 hours midday, then they come back in the evening. So it's basically how you do your scheduling, getting back to the response that I provided to Director Rusha. Generally, part-timers, we use them for specialized run, limited runs, or trippers that we have. Because basically when you look at the various blocks, what we call, and let me qualify what I mean by a block. So basically on a route, you assign a vehicle and that vehicle could have different operators, but it's out on the road for a period of time and those are blocks, right? And so basically we determine what might be feasible. And when we use trippers during the course, or we call them loop extras here, when we have special services, if we know that there's going to be an abundance of people utilizing the system around secondary school, higher institutions of learning, you may utilize a part-timer, recognizing that you may only have that headway or those runs for 2.5 or 3 hours. Does that address your question? You're on mute, ma'am.
It does, and it's helpful for me. And another similar question is, and I've already checked with Ms. Pelleggi on it, it occurred to me that the $4,000 signing bonus we have may or may not relate to people leaving. I understand there are 2 payouts. I mean, I understand that that would be a great recruitment tool. There might be folks who think, well, I'll just stick it out for 6 months. And I was wondering if there is a correlation between the final payout for a signing bonus and people separating.
I'll give the floor to Ms. Pelleggi, but I want to start and in reference to the incentives that we have been providing. They have allowed people to come on board, but in the grand scheme of things, $4,000 isn't a lot to retain somebody going forward when we are focused, when they are placed in adverse working conditions. And that's some of the feedback that we've been able to garner from individuals, recognizing that it's a difficult job being in your own mobile office where you are engaging with individuals that have less than a sunny disposition. They may be not in the right state of mind or could be incapacitated in some way. And that is something that $4,000 would not mitigate going forward. And this gets back to conversations, once again, having engaged with other transit agency leaders that are faced with some of the same challenges that we are. And simply put, all money isn't good money in reference to one being assaulted. And so that is something in and of itself, but I'll yield the floor to Ms. Pelleggi, but I just wanted to qualify that response. Thank you.
You, Ms. Pelleggi.
Thank you. So I would just add, Director Sloan, that the 4,000 is a good tool for attraction. It's good. It's competitive out in the market. A lot of organizations are providing some form of signing bonus. So it's a good attraction tool. But I would reinforce what GM Johnson said. We don't see a direct correlation between, you get your final payment, and then there's a spike in separations. But overall, it's just in our stay interviews and things like that, we're not getting the sense that it's enough to retain if someone is having difficulty for family reasons, or if they get alternate employment, because that alternate employment may also be providing a signing bonus. And so they're just transferring one for another. So we see it's a good tool for recruitment, but it's not enough, I would say, of an incentive to keep someone. That said, in HR, what we're focused on is if it's enough to attract them in, then we need to do what we can as an agency to keep them and not have those parsed out payments be what they're staying for. So those are some of our retention initiatives that we need to work on.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I have no further questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Director Sloan. I don't see any other hands up of committee members. So at this point, the patient one, Director Tisdale, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Always happy to be patient for you. Looking at the packet that you submitted, I have what probably is a procedural question more than a substantive question. If you would please pull up, I believe it's page 6 of your packet. It is the dashboard that shows the trend numbers, various green arrows, red arrows, yellow arrows, and so forth. I have a question about that, if I may, please, and that is looking at that page. And as I said, I think it's page 6. I'll give you a second to retrieve that.
Just give me one moment.
It might be packet page 10, slide 6. There's definitely a 6 and a 10 both on there, Director Tisdale.
Yeah, yes, and I'm not sure if it might be presentation page 6 or it might be packet page 6. I'm not sure which, but it's the one that has the dashboard for the trend lines reflecting the green, red, and yellow arrows relative to various numbers.
Are you seeing my screen?
Not,
No.
Oh, goodness. Hold on one moment. How about now?
That's the one. Thank you very much. Looking at the legend for this chart in the lower left corner, I was confused and it's probably my fault, but I was confused when I was reviewing the packet in advance of the meeting. It says negative trend plus greater than 15% vacancy rate. Then it says positive trend plus greater than 15% vacancy rate. Can you explain the difference between those two descriptions? I would think that one of them should show perhaps less than 15% vacancy rate.
The intention, really, the difference is really, we're using 15 as the benchmark. The negative means in the red means it's just gotten, we've gotten worse since the prior reporting. The yellow means that it's gotten better, meaning the vacancy rate has declined, but it's still 15% or greater.
Okay, so the positive trend would be that it's gone down but it's still greater than 15% vacancy rate.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, and forgive me, as I say, it was a procedural question and one probably confined to me, but I wondered if you could expand upon that, and I appreciate that. I see that now as positive trend minus, meaning it's gone down, but it's still greater than 15% vacancy, correct?
Correct. And I would just add, Director Tisdale, first off, I would just say, it could also be me because it maybe makes sense in my head, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it automatically makes sense to everyone else. So this is that iterative process. So I'm happy to look at a better way to represent it. But what I really wanted to highlight there was to be really transparent and say, yes, we have a positive trend and we've been able to drop our vacancy rate, but it's still not where we need it to be. And so I didn't want to lose in the communication, like, we've dropped it, and then have it seem like we're good, pat on the back, and we're good, because we're not where we need to be. So that was the intention of trying to add that yellow one.
No, I appreciate that. And if I may, Mr. Chair, just to supplement my comments, I think Director Rosenthal's observation about the actual numbers, that perhaps it would be helpful to the board if, when we see this again, we included the hard numbers, the N for each category, so that we have a sense of, what are we talking about? Because when we look at rail operators and you look at the part-time and you go, wow, it's 33%. You say, well, yeah, that's one person. So it artificially bloats the impact of that number. Whereas when you're looking at bus operators and look at vacancies, you say that's 114. Okay, that's a different kind of number. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your according me the time.
Thank you, Director Tisdale. Appreciated the clarifying question, especially. It's very helpful for all of us. All right, any other questions or comments for Ms. Pileggi or for GM CEO Johnson before we move on? All right, I see none, but I do see that Director Bob Broom has joined the meeting. I don't know how long you've been with us, but welcome, Director Broom, and let the minutes reflect his attendance. All right, there being no other discussion items, we move to item E, other matters. And I'm going to take Chair's prerogative. I think it would be helpful for a bit of an update. Well, I can wait if Director Harwick would like to weigh in first. Why don't you go ahead, Director Harwick? I apologize.
Are you sure? I'm happy to wait. It's not urgent.
You go right ahead, and then I'll finish up.
Okay. I'm just thinking today just about our future plans for this committee, and something that I hadn't brought up before.
You've got mail.
I haven't heard that in a day or two.
There we go. We're muted. Proceed, Director.
So I'm just thinking so much. Sorry. I'm just thinking about a lot of, really, in this just last set of questions is a perfect example of what I am interested in finding out. Maybe if we could pursue this, and I'm thinking about a dashboard, an online dashboard that would be sort of supplementary to the information that we receive leading up to meetings or post meetings. And I'm thinking about, there's so much rich data out there that's available, but we have to regularly lean into our board staff to ask, can we get this? Can we find out, who, we had asked the other day about like how we were seeing about bus on time during the cold weather, or what the transit service looked like. Or a lot of times, like in my day job, I'm, regularly thinking about, what do bus stops, how do we enhance the bus stops that Dottie owns and how do we complement that? But we don't know if Dottie owns a bus stop. But I also think a lot of these conversations that we've been having, around our board governance, a lot of that, and I'm not saying all of this would be resolved with a transparent online dashboard, but it is a really easy way for us to share information, one with the taxpayers, but also with our mayors and our city council members and our state legislators, and begin to just make that more accessible. And I'm not saying everything needs to be accessible, but I do think that a lot of our requests probably are a bit redundant and just take up a lot of staff time. So I just think it would behoove us to consider adding in this online dashboard, at least have a conversation about it and what it would look like, both for us internally, but then also just for some external transparency. So that's what I got.
All right. Thank you, Director Harwick. I see Director Catlin in queue with her hand raised. Go ahead.
Thank you. And thank you, Director Harwick. That I completely agree. And as we're looking at the performance committee moving forward, one of the things that I've talked to Chair Davidson about is moving toward or performance metrics to measure the agency as well as the board performance. And this type of dashboard would certainly help in that particular endeavor. I think we've kind of put to bed the whole, not put to bed, but we have established the GM CEO performance metrics, and that had previously been the whole focus of the performance committee. But I think we want to look at a really holistic approach to the agency performance and the board performance. So what you're suggesting, Director Harwick, is right in line with what I think would be very helpful. And recognizing it'll take some time to develop and evolve, I do think it would be a really good tool for us to use as directors. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Catlin. Director Rusha, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just we are in other matters, right?
That's correct.
Okay, just checking. All right. So I had a few questions about the new safety shields. So I was really happy to see that we started installing the new safety shields, and I saw in the employee newsletter this morning that it does take each install does take a team of 2 technicians about 4 hours. And so we're covering approximately 2 buses a day. And it said that the goal was to reach at least 250 buses by the end of June. So I was just wondering if you could give us a sense. And again, these are new safety shields. I don't want anyone in the public to think that we didn't have any other mechanisms prior to this. But I wanted to see if we can get a sense of, how long we think it will take to get through our fleet. If there's any other options we have before us to maybe try to, speed up that process. And I don't mean put extra pressure on our frontline staff. I just didn't know if there were any other tools we had. And then the second question was the timeline of our contractors who will also be receiving these shields. Have they indicated when they know they will be installed? And third was, and I asked because I have heard different answers to this question, but do we know right now if our contractors are providing shields across their fleet currently across all buses? And I am happy to repeat the questions as they get answered. I know that was a lot.
Well, let's give it a shot with GM CEO Johnson or COO Ford on the questions, and we may need you to repeat. I tried to take the notes, but go ahead and proceed.
Thank you very kindly. I'll start, and then Mr. Ford can add in. So first and foremost, just to provide context, we're talking about protective barriers that have been manufactured by a third party, being AeroGuard. These are protective shields that are used to enhance the safety of the operator. The previous shields that were fabricated internal to the organization were actually designed during the height of COVID to protect our operators from borne pathogens or whatever the word, I'm not, the COVID cooties. And so basically where we are right now is that we are looking to leverage something a lot more durable. This is something that really reared its head in 2021, 2022, and there are several suppliers. And so coming into the organization, we assessed as we saw the ones that were fabricated internally, that we had an opportunity to procure buses, i.e. have them readily made by providing special specifications with the procurement. Secondly, as relates to the contractors, those vehicles are owned by RTD. And so basically when we're thinking with the replacement cycle as well, all new vehicles will actually have those shields. To the point that you raised, can we speed up the process? Quite naturally, we have a myriad of what we call campaigns underway. That includes replacing the cloth seats with hard vinyl seats that are easier to clean. So as we look at these campaigns, we're being intentional, recognizing that we have facility maintenance staff, that we also have to do facility maintenance staff. I meant to say vehicle maintenance staff, I'm sorry. Vehicle maintenance staff that are also doing PMs and things of the like. So we are basically looking at our people power, associating that with the workforce that we have available and bringing that full circle in reference to what is being done first. I can double back with you, Director Arusha, and the entire board and be more specific, but off of the top of my head, that was the intent as we went full stream ahead, recognizing that it would take a period of time in reference to outfit a fleet of nearly 1,000 buses. So did I touch upon all your questions?
If I may, Mr. Chair.
See,
Thanks. Okay. Yes, I think so. And you know, and I do know that we own our whole bus fleet. I was just trying to make a distinction because it seemed like in the newsletter there was a distinction in terms of the timeline, and I had heard conflicting reports about, you know, I'll just call them the COVID era shields, you know, if we still had them, but I think this is very helpful. I can just follow up if I have any clarifying questions. And from my perspective or my understanding is that these shields are not only more durable, but they actually provide greater coverage as well. And I didn't know if you had mentioned that. I was trying to take some notes and track what you were saying, but
so yes, let me qualify. They actually are a guard because I personally went out and saw them and was with operators when we were looking at the different options. And so basically, there's an ability where there's the bottom that's a lot more durable, whereby we just had plexiglass before. I don't know what is fabricated on the bottom, but it encapsulates the operator, very analogous to a cab in a rail car going forward. Good, bad, and indifferent. Some people may like them. Other people believe that they can't escape if in fact they were caught in a precarious position. But you do have the opportunity to slide the window back to get air. There's like a fan component and things of the like. But what we did do prior to making a decision about the path forward, there was a show and tell that was had across various divisions with the different types, and that was taken into consideration when a determination was made about what the agency would do relative to selecting what would be most advantageous, recognizing that these are people mobile offices and they had a say in what they wanted.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
sorry about that. Director Tisdale had to be patient again. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. still always willing and happy to be patient. A quick question that need not be answered now, but I would like to put on the radar screen at this point, and that is relative to our electrification plan or our transition plan. It was in April of 2023 that we authorized General Manager to contract for the creation of a transition plan with work that was to begin in September of 2023 in creating that plan with a view toward a final report no later than December of 2024. I know it is sometime until December 24, but it's also been some time since April of 2023. And I'd like to know if we can, if not tonight, perhaps at the next meeting, get an update on the transition / electrification plan for the agency. Thank you.
Ms. Johnson.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you, Chair Tisdale. So to provide some qualifiers, going before the board seeking authorization to leverage a summary scope that was used to inform the solicitation that was done in April. That was put out on the street in August. I apprised the board when there was an award made to WSP. That was done the latter part of August, recognizing that it took some time to get a notice of proceed. That was done in September, recognizing that the first meeting in which we had took place in mid to late October. And I believe we sent a communique to the board. We recently had a meeting just 2 weeks ago with the leadership team of WSP and those within the organization, including myself, charted a path forward, recognizing we are working on a work plan for operations. That's going to be incorporated in relative to you all garnering a better understanding what that entails, because it's more than just the electrification piece. The critical piece in all this is about facilities and a new way of doing business, not to mention all the different factors as relates to original equipment manufacturers, what's readily available, suppliers, and things of the like, because as you are aware, this has been a big topic for the industry as a whole in North America. I shared with Chair Davidson just the other day during the course of our one-on-one some ideas to ensure that the board could garner a better understanding about some of the obstacles relating to where we are as an industry. And I don't want to speak too much out of school, but it'll be up to the board collectively to decide. It could be a study session whereby we have our consultants with us. There could be field trips whereby one can see the challenges in various operating environments. So it was my intent to speak in a little more detail during the course of the retreat, but wanted to provide that context, especially in light of where we are and what happens with only one manufacturer of chassis and things of the like. So thank you very much for the question.
All right, thank you. Good question. Director Guzman, floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to verify a bit of information operationally. Denverite posted an article on the 12th that said that the A line is going to be down for repairs on the wires, I believe, this Saturday from 3 a.m. to 8:15 a.m. Is that accurate and correct? And do we have any other sort of projects like that going on where we'll need to advise the public? Clearly, they wouldn't have it if we didn't make an announcement about it, but I just want to make sure that we're putting it on the record because we always get blasted for not doing this. So it's here. And if it's correct, then we can move on. That's all I'm asking. Thank you.
So if I may, and then I'll yield the floor to Mr. Jensen. Forgive me, Mr. Chair, I just jumped in.
That's all right. Dialogue.
Yeah, so thank you very kindly, recognizing that our concessionaire does have to do work. We do disseminate that information, and yes, that's how Denverite got that information. There have been announcements being made at Denver Union Station relative to what we foresee happening. And this is generally coordinated through an operations vantage point with our liaison. Mr. Jensen, would you like to add more detail?
I think what you said was complete. I would add to the question, is there more work? Yes, there's always going to be more work that needs to be done. So we've got a really good idea of the necessary maintenance required for the next year. We will get information out to our customers. We don't want to get it too, we don't want to advertise right now what's going to happen in December. So we try to get the information out at the proper time in a timely manner. So yes, there is ongoing maintenance on both light rail and commuter rail and the A, B, and G lines. That's a way of life for us on the rail side of the house. So hopefully that answered your question.
Mr. Chair, if I might say one more thing, it would be really helpful, I think, for safety and operations to get updates on their monthly meetings about any projects that we should be aware of for the following month, or at least the next 2 weeks following this meeting. Given that we don't meet so regularly and there's not quite a dashboard, and those announcements can come out a little sporadically, just so that we're aware of what's going on in our districts or what we can look forward to going on in our districts. A-line is a big one for B and for C. And so I brought that up because I'm director from C. And I realize it's all in the works, but just work plans and going forward, that might be something we could request of staff for your meetings so that we're all aware of it. Thank you.
Ms. Johnson.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Okay. All right. Appreciate the input, Director Guzman. All right. I don't see any other hands up. I have asked for a guest speaker to appear tonight, somebody known and well beloved by you all. I've asked Chair Davidson just for planning purposes and readying our minds and our souls for a monumental meeting coming up to talk just a little bit about how the retreat is coming together, and especially maybe the components of work plan and how we may discuss those that day, along with a number of other priorities. And certainly, GM CEO Johnson, if you'd like to opine as well, you're certainly welcome to, but not necessary if you don't. So, Chair Davidson, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Whitmore. I appreciate it. Thank you to all directors who have engaged so far with the moderators who have been selected for the upcoming retreat on February 24th. I know that there are still meetings being scheduled with other directors who have not yet had a chance to engage. Please continue to work with them and schedule that. We are starting to have an agenda take shape. There will be a number of things on the agenda. It will be a busy day. As has been alluded to by Chair of the Performance Committee and First Vice Chair of the Board, Catlin, we will be having dialogue around agency performance metrics, which we will have an opportunity to engage with General Manager and CEO Johnson. And we have had some time as well to discuss one-on-one what types of things we can share and suggest in the course of the discussion to help brainstorm. So that will be certainly a whole board topic and of interest. There's also a topic coming together regarding communications of agency needs, both current and future. I think that will also be an engaging topic for the whole board. But what, of course, Mr. Chair of this committee, Whitmore, you're referring to is the work on the committee work plans, which I had a chance to speak about along with Finance Chair Tisdale last night, which is that we do have an agenda item to visit those work plans in their draft form at the at the retreat. And the current vision for that is that we would have breakout sessions for the Operations and Safety Committee and for the Finance and Planning Committee. As this agenda is taking shape, I'd like to communicate with Chair Whitmore and Chair Tisdale of the respective committees, as that will be an opportunity for the chairs and their vice chairs to facilitate discussion with committee members of the work plans themselves, what's currently been drafted, what, if anything, is missing. And the discussion would center around the policy issues, as we've talked about at prior retreats, big P, policy issues that we want to schedule for those work plans. And if we may identify that there are some policy interests that may not necessarily fit in 2024, but this will also give us a place to put things in a parking lot for 2025 and 2026, and to engage with our board office and, of course, our executive board office manager, Mr. Kroll, in recording those priorities that we want to revisit. So I believe that having this on the retreat agenda, this is very likely to become a standing retreat agenda item for retreats to come in the future, of looking at these work plans, doing a look back on the year before, what we said we were going to do, what we put in the parking lot, what we accomplished, and then revisiting the year ahead. This year will be the first year we're doing it. So it'll be a good chance for us all to explore what works together. So thank you, Chair Whitmore. That was what I had wanted to share on that matter, and very much look forward to the engagement that day and to those breakout sessions of operations and safety and finance and planning. And I should have noted that we do have the Standing Committee of Performance. I think the Performance Committee's interest is the whole board engagement on those agency performance metrics. So that will be not a breakout, but will be a whole board activity. So thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll yield the floor back to you, and certainly happy to take any questions from our colleagues.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. I see a question from Director Rusha. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this actually relates to the performance metrics. I wanted to stress that we ensure we do not leave out paratransit performance metrics. And I state, because I had asked for informally and then more formally about 10 days ago, if we could see the on-time performance reports for Access-a-Ride for the last couple of years, just because the board hasn't received those reports in quite a while. So I just wanted to put that out there, and then if there's any staff here that might be able to address just when the ETA would be on the OTP reports for Access-a-Ride for the last 2 fiscal years. That might also help inform us as a body before our retreat, if we could get that information as well.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I could answer the first part of that question. It looks like Ms. Johnson has raised her hand for perhaps the second part of the question. So Director Rusha, thank you for the question. Yes, so I would encourage all board members to come with really the probing question, I think, is how do our constituents, how do our customers measure us? How do they measure the agency, given that we represent the agency? So all those areas, I think we need to come forward and dialogue about. I've taken a note under my metrics note page to address the matter of paratransit. So thank you for bringing that up, and actually a good chance to just ask all directors to ask yourself that probing question of how are our customers, how are our constituents measuring us? I think those are great starting points to help start to flesh out what those agency performance metrics might be. And with that, Ms. Johnson, I saw that you raised your hand. I'm guessing that's to the second portion of the question. I'll yield the floor to Mr. Chair and Ms. Johnson.
Proceed, Ms. Johnson, if you'd like.
Yes, thank you so much, Committee Chair Whitmore, Chair Davidson, and Director Rusha for your question. I was just going to say I need to confer with staff as it relates to when that might be, recognizing we do have data, but we work, we contract that out and we have to get information from them. And so I don't want to sit here and say we're going to have something specifically when we've have yet to have an opportunity to confer to see what's most plausible as we go forward. So I can work with the team, and I see Michael Ford on camera if he had something additional to add, but I would assume that we need to work in tandem because I want to ensure that we're meeting your expectations. Mr. Ford, do you have any additional?
No, just to reiterate, we will check with staff and get back to the board, but right now I couldn't give you a specific time, but we can be clear about that after a discussion with staff.
All right. Thank you. Is that all, Director Rusha? All right. I see no other hands raised. So we are about to adjourn. Our next meeting is Wednesday, March 13th, same time. We will see you all at the board meeting upcoming and then the retreat. So with no other items on the agenda, I declare this meeting adjourned at 6:54 p.m. Mountain. Thank you. Have a good rest of your Valentine's Day.
Good night, everyone.
See you later.